Hello and welcome to Keys to the Market with Racia, Realtor at the House Store. Today we're going to talk about something extremely important, which is fraud protection. That happens to a lot of people, both sides of the table, so it's not geared towards sellers or buyers. It's kind of something for everyone. And to help us answer these questions today, I have special guests on my show, Katie and Raquel from Foothills Title. Katie, Raquel, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us. We're excited.
Thank you. So do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about yourselves and your company?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Katie, and I'm one of 3 attorneys that we have on staff at Foothills among our many locations. I have really done nothing but title my whole career, so I've tried to pick this and really focus on it and master it. So we pride ourselves in trying to do things the correct way, and it may take a little longer sometimes and maybe a little bit more frustrating sometimes, but we definitely pride ourselves in doing it the right way.
My name is Raquel, and also with Foothills Title, and I focus on the business development and marketing side and working with agents and also with lenders and being able to also highlight the additional resources and benefits that Foothills Title offers and really helping agents be able to grow and build on their business. And you were at one of the trainings today.
Yes, it's great. Thank you.
And being able to expand beyond the legal element of where Foothills Title really has built its reputation in highlighting the other benefits that Foothills Title has to offer.
Awesome, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And at the when the podcast posts, I will have all the contact information for both Katie and Raquel, and all the information for Foothills Title as well as myself. So if there are questions you have beyond what we covered today, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll make sure that we can try to get you an answer for that. Okay, so let's just kind of jump right in. So what are the most common types of real estate fraud that you see in today's market?
We have a few that we see pretty consistently. A lot of them involve wiring instructions. So lots of money coming in and out of title companies, going to lenders, coming from buyers, going to sellers. So interception of that information, changing of wiring instructions is probably what a great amount of the fraud is related to, but we're really seeing these people become bolder and braver, and they are flat out impersonating sellers, talking to us on the phone, sending us emails, and they are not the seller at all. So it's a really evolving thing. They're smart and they really adapt, but almost always having to do with some type of identity theft or changing of wiring instructions.
That sounds pretty much like what we see on our side too. The biggest thing we see also is the wire fraud issue.
Yeah.
That's a bad one. So why has property and title fraud become so prevalent in the last few years?
I think technology ultimately is allowing for that. So it's technology is a blessing and a curse. We couldn't do our jobs without it. Mm-hmm. But so much of this is becoming a distant process. We have deals that go from contract to closing, and we never see the parties in person. And so it really allows for a lot of electronic communication that can be intercepted. A lot of places where maybe the seller can choose to sign not at our office, and there's some opportunity for fraud there. So I think it's technology, and I think it's
Makes it easier.
You lose the necessity to have to be there in person.
Yes.
And unfortunately, so many records are publicly available and much easily accessible through technology now, that I think it's really opened the doors in so many other avenues that it didn't before.
Yes, I will agree with that
absolutely.
too, for sure. Everything's public record now, it seems like. So what misconceptions do homeowners, even more so than agents, have about title and fraud protection?
A couple of these, I would say one that we hear a lot is, that doesn't happen here. That's in like really big cities. That's not happening here in Knoxville. That wouldn't happen to me. We're seeing it all the time. Not successfully, but they are out there all the time. It is a prevalent issue even here. I think that's a big misconception. And I think there's a misconception that there are coverages and insurances out there that protect for it kind of automatically. And that's definitely a misconception. Specific types of title insurance aren't going to give you any post-closing fraud forgery coverage, and it's just not a default coverage you get in a lot of situations. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think people do just automatically assume that if they're closing with a title company, there's all these things in place for protection, but there are things that you have to do to implement those things.
absolutely.
So what are the different policy options for title insurance, and are these available for different types of properties?
Yes, that's a great question that is directly related to what we just talked about in the last question. So if we're talking about a buyer, they have their title insurance in place, their owner's title insurance. They can choose basic or enhanced, or of course they can choose not to get owner's title insurance.
Which we don't recommend.
We do not recommend.
We don't either.
So with a basic policy, you're going to have fraud forgery protection for things that occur in the chain of title before your closing. You're not going to have any post-closing fraud forgery coverage unless you purchase an enhanced policy. But like you mentioned, not all properties, not all transactions qualify for enhanced. So generally we see residential properties that will be a primary residence. Those are the ones that qualify for enhanced and that increased coverage.
Okay, great. So how vulnerable are properties that are free and clear?
Definitely more so than, a primary residence with a mortgage. And like Raquel was saying about things being public record, they prey on the situation where it will take a lot longer for someone to figure it out. And of course the money will be long gone by then. So properties that have no liens on them, properties that are vacant or not owner occupied, those are always going to be a little bit more vulnerable because it'll take a bit longer for anyone to realize it's being sold out from under them.
Yeah, it does take a little bit. And I know sometimes we'll have people in our side of it that will call, especially on vacant land. That seems to be the worst. And they'll say the seller's name and want to sell that. But then when you start to ask the questions that we ask, then they suddenly don't have all the right answers. And so that starts putting red flags up. But yeah, so I see where there are definitely more vulnerable for the ones that are outright owned free and clear, plus the vacant for
Absolutely.
sure. So let's talk about the Equity Protect a little bit. So what is Equity Protect and how does it work just in simple terms for a homeowner?
Sure. So Equity Protect is a different company altogether. We have a relationship with Equity Protect, and Equity Protect came onto the market about 5 years ago in trying to find a solution for being able to have a preventative measure in place against some of this property theft that was happening, particularly vacant land and property owned free and clear, non-owner occupied. Those were some of the primary focuses. So looking at this, the founders of this company have been in the title insurance world and were very understanding about the different types of policies and coverages and where there were holes and how they could fix and have something that actually stopped that from happening. Because unfortunately, other solutions in the market were notification systems versus preventative systems. So property owners found out that there was a transfer of ownership on their property. The problem was it already happened.
It's too
It's
late.
too late. Yep.
Right. So it was looking at how can we actually prevent and stop this from moving forward. So in simplistic terms, they created a method of being able to lock down title. And the easiest way that I like to reference what you can relate to is like a credit freeze. So if you have your credit frozen with Equifax and TransUnion and Experian, and you go to open a credit card or someone has your social security number and they try to open a credit card, they're going to be prevented from doing that because your credit's frozen. So in theory, it works in a similar manner, only this is attached to your title of your property and it prevents from that transaction going any further.
Okay, great. That's good information for sure. So what makes it different than traditional title insurance or like a monitoring service?
Sure. So with this in place, essentially a homeowner through Equity Protect goes through a process first that they do their own identity checks and their methodologies to ensure that that is the rightful owner. They will also do an analysis to see whether or not you fall into the high, medium, or low risk category. So a first-time home buyer that has minimal amount of equity in their home, has a high amount of loan, they will let that individual know they're at a low risk and not in need of a full title lock protection. Vacant land, own free and clear, that's going to be one that is in your high risk category. So going forward with that, and they've identified you are the rightful owner, they go through the process where a document that's referred to as a notice to restrict document that was drafted along with the lead attorney from ALTA, the American Land Title Association, that document gets recorded onto the property and is reflected on the title. So if someone were to go forward and put the property up for sale and it goes in the contract and the agent loves Foothills Title and sends the contract to Foothills Title, and our team is going through the process of ordering the title search, we have the title report that comes in and we're reviewing that, it is going to reflect on that title report that this, what's called a UCC code, is reflected that needs to be cleared, because essentially it's not a clear title when that is showing on the title report, in order for it to move forward. So our team then contacts Equity Protect, which is reflected on the title report. Equity Protect then contacts the client to say, are you in fact selling your property? And it goes from there. If they are not, that stops that transaction right then and there. They no longer have a clear title in order to be able to move forward with the sale of the property.
Okay.
And that would benefit in the event of a refinance too, which is another place we're seeing some fraud, is impersonating a free and clear property to take out an equity line on it and then take the funds and disappear. That would pop on a title search for that as well, assuming the lender had requested a title search.
100%. And so this is where Graceland is a perfect example, where here in Tennessee, there was a potential fraudulent activity in trying to exploit that property that was stopped.
Yeah, and it's great to get ahead of it. So putting this in place in the front is definitely the way to go on it for sure.
Yes.
I know we've heard some crazy stories, and unfortunately they didn't have the protection in place and they didn't end well. So,
well, and I can give just a story through Equity Protect that this is in a different state, but they were out-of-state owners that owned a investment property that they used for Airbnb or VRBO purposes. It was rented out for the entire summer, so a 3-month time period, which was not abnormal for where this property was located. The individuals that rented it held open houses and had it for sale by owner.
oh my word.
Yes, and actually went through the process of selling the property. It sold. The rightful property owner showed up when the time period had ended in order for the cleaning and whatnot, and the locks had been changed and there were people living in the property.
Oh my.
Yes.
So definitely get this protection.
And it's worth adding that it's an addition, it's something you do in addition to your title insurance. It's not an either or thing. So we want to try to avoid the issue. Obviously, that's what Equity Protect does, but we still want that coverage in place in the event we don't avoid it altogether.
And
Yes.
if there's not a title policy in place,
Right.
you cannot have this attached onto the title policy to block it from moving forward.
So another reason to have a title policy.
Yes.
Yes, it's so important. Okay, so how does your company integrate fraud prevention into your daily operations?
Yeah, so this is something we revisit our protocols a lot to kind of address new methods that we're seeing. We are working with a third-party vendor doing identity verification for all parties on all contracts or refinances that come through our office. It's going to actually look at their provided IDs and try to vet them, but it's also going to ask them to take a selfie of themselves so they can see if it matches. And it's also going to do some knowledge-based authentication to try to really weed out somebody who is not who they say they are. So all of our deals will go through that process. We have also started sending out letters on non-owner occupied properties. So if we get either a vacant property under contract or just a property that the seller isn't living in, our system automatically sends a letter to the address that's been getting the tax bills, and it just says Foothills Title has been hired to do a closing on this property. If you don't know anything about this, please call us ASAP, and if you do, you can throw this letter away. So we're definitely doing that, but I think probably the most effective thing we can do is talk about it. It's why we're so happy that you're doing this. You had us here today, educating buyers and sellers, educating agents, just because no one is kind of beyond the reach of this. So we really encourage everybody to keep their feelers up, and if it doesn't seem quite right, it's probably not.
That's right. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to add that one of the things I've learned through Equity Protect and conversations with them is really the elderly get preyed upon very heavily in these scenarios. And so property that's been owned for an extended period of time, those targets, and just knowing, unfortunately, how vulnerable our elderly population can be.
Yeah, that's sad, but it is a sad truth.
Mm-hmm.
So what additional safeguards have you implemented over the last few years?
So the letters, like we talked about, our new third-party vendors, and really, we've really made a switch, speaking of things being handled at a distance. When I started in this industry, mail-outs were something we did all the time. And somebody would get their documents, go to a notary, and just put them back in the mail. Those days are over. We try to maintain control over the notaries. They're vetted notaries that we can reach if something goes wrong. We have seen situations where the notary was in on the whole situation. So unfortunately, we had to take that step. And of course, those notaries are going a step further and verifying identity of those signers as well. But really just, like I said, kind of keeping our feelers up and asking the question if something just doesn't seem quite right. And obviously these tools that we have implemented have helped us avoid things, but sometimes just asking some additional questions has avoided some of these situations as well.
Okay. So how do you educate clients about protecting themselves before and after a closing?
Yeah, so we love to educate agents. We do a lot of continuing education to make sure they're aware and really encourage them to understand like we're all part of the same team, and it's really important that you're helping your client understand how important this is, and it's not just coming from me. It does seem like a sales pitch, so it really helps to have the agent like, no, this really is in your best interest. So that's helpful. We also, that's kind of the first thing I talk about if we have a client that doesn't really understand title insurance or why they need it. Fraud's the first thing we go to, since it's a huge place that we see title insurance help people. And it usually they hear that word, the post-closing fraud and forgery, they're like, okay, I'll get the title insurance.
That's
really
it's a scary word. It's a scary thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was on a call recently actually with Equity Protect, and there was a statistic that they talked about that since COVID time period, that fraud in real estate has gone up 6,000%.
Wow.
I believe it.
Yes.
I would too. I mean, that's a high number, but I'm not surprised.
Yes.
Just from what we see on a regular basis,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
So the amount of attempts that have gone out there in all markets, it's not exclusive to any one area, to the point that in many states there are additional bills that are going in front of the legislature to try and add additional safeguards at the government level, but it still leaves loopholes and things in this fraud and forgery space related to real estate.
Yeah, they're learning the safeguards that we put in place and altering their methods.
They do. That's the sad part,
so,
is they learn what we're doing to be proactive, and then they adapt. So
absolutely.
It's constantly changing, but that just goes to show you how much effort we put into trying to protect. So yeah, it's a good combination here. Okay, so do you have any kind of real stories that you want to share?
Oh, we've got tons of these. Some with happy endings and some with sad endings, unfortunately. But just some kind of good ones that we've had recently. We were talking about the non-owner occupant letters that we sent out. we actually caught a fraudulent transaction that way. So this gentleman lived in a different state, and he got the letter in the mail, and he was like, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm panicking. And so he had to obviously get some authorities involved in things, but we were able to stop the closing before anything happened, which was great. So that was a good, happy ending. And another one that we had that I think is kind of fun, because even though they're very smart, sometimes this simplest stuff slips them up. This fraudulent person was actually communicating with our office, telephone and email, representing themselves to be the seller. And the name was something that could be male or female. I don't remember what it was. And we were like, can you send the ID in, just as an added layer of protection? So they sent an email with a photo of the ID, and we look at it, and it's a man, and this person had taken title with a husband in many years ago. So she was like an 80-year-old lady, and this was like a very young, strapping gentleman. And so we were like, well, something's not quite right. So that was kind of a funny one that we were able to stop as well.
So I have a not good story. This was an instance again where Equity Protect had shared a story, someone that did not have this protection in place. So it was vacant land, and it had been within a family for decades. And kids growing up, they used to play baseball with their friends in this open lot. It just stayed vacant all the years. The parents had passed, all of the children that owned the property, and one of the children came back for a 20-30 year high school reunion and lived in a different state. And the friends said, I cannot believe your family sold that property. And those individuals said, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
So this got even worse, because the property not only sold, but it was purchased by a builder, which the builder purchased it on the up and up. There was nothing fraudulent related to the buyer. Built a spec house on this property, sold the spec house to new buyers before any of this was discovered. So as a title attorney, you can just imagine the legal mess of all of that.
That's a disaster.
That is a disaster.
So it's worth throwing in, just as a hypothetical, those buyers, if they had an enhanced title policy, that would offer coverage in a situation like this where their title is just not good. They were not conveyed legal title in any way. So at the minimum, we're talking their investment that they put down and paying their lender off and all of that. There's no telling how that would shake out, but the underwriter would provide coverage for that. So that very scary story.
Mm-hmm. That is a very scary story. One more reason to have Equity Protect and to buy title insurance. Okay, so can you share some real life examples without violating any kind of privacy where fraud was caught or prevented?
So we have the ones we just talked about. I'm trying to think of some more without.
Well, I can share mine.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I relocated here, and we had purchased some land that we had planned on building on prior to moving, and our property was put up for sale fraudulently, and we had no idea, no clue whatsoever. And the only reason why that was caught was because the prior listing agent happened to know that we were out of state, and there were some things that just on observation did not seem quite right that they happened to notice, and reached out to us, and we were able to obviously get that listing removed, and that was prior to Equity Protect existing. But that was a perfect example for myself. We were out of state, it was up for sale, had no idea. It could have easily sold, transferred ownership, and we would have never known.
And that was right here in East Tennessee.
And that was right in East Tennessee.
Right here in East Tennessee.
That was in Maryville, to be exact.
Yeah. So it does happen here,
It
unfortunately.
absolutely does.
Okay, so what trends are you seeing in terms of who is being targeted? I mean, we talked about the elderly. Are there other trends that you're seeing happen?
Yeah, so This is a controversial, I think, statement I'm about to make, but it's something that our underwriters are continuously coaching us on, and it's the security of your email platforms. Just because so much communication is digital these days, big email services are quite easy for a fraudster to get into. So
Gmail.
yeah, she said it. And so what we see is, people have this thought that, well, I'd be able to know if somebody was in my account, sending things on my behalf or something of that nature. And they're not doing it that way. They sit and they watch at all the things coming back and forth, and they don't say anything until the exact right moment. And oftentimes in those cases, it doesn't come from the correct email. It comes from a slightly different email address. And it will alter where you're sending funds, or where you're sending a payoff, or they might take our fax number off of our signature line and send a fake payoff via fax. So it really is, anyone who is emailing is at risk of being a target. So that includes agents, buyers, sellers, and of course the title companies are at risk. Oftentimes we see our accounts kind of spoofed. We got a call, this has been a year or so ago, but from someone in Kentucky asking about, it was an agent in Kentucky that was asking about a closing we were doing in Michigan. And we were like, well, we don't service Michigan. And he's like, well, I've been emailing with somebody from your company. And it wasn't even us, and it wasn't even here. So nobody's exempt. Everybody's being targeted, unfortunately.
What's scary, the amount of information that's on the dark web, and along with the information, instructions on how to go forward with these fraudulent scams. And so just that high alert, if something doesn't feel right, you need to trust your gut, taking all the potential safeguards that you possibly can, and really, for agents, really educating their clients on how prevalent this is. And while some steps may seem painful, there's a reason for it that ultimately is in protection of them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And some things seem redundant, but there again, it's one of those things that you just have to make sure that they know and they understand it.
Right.
And you can't be, too safe. And we say that at the table all the time in different contexts, but, it's worth over checking, if the last time we check avoids a massive problem.
And so I just want to add, with our relationship with Equity Protect, the reason why Foothills Title put this in place is not to take the place of title insurance, obviously, but because we get asked oftentimes, especially with property, that enhanced policies are not an option. What can we do? So our relationship with Equity Protect is being able to say, this is another layer. We have this relationship in place in order to provide another resource where there is a protection measure for the benefit of all of the individuals in the property ownership. It is not just to add additional unnecessary elements. It is a solution that people are asking for.
Yeah.
Yes. And even though nothing is actually foolproof, the more layers, as you said, the more layers you have, the less likely it is, but nothing is foolproof.
Right, and with Equity Protect, it does come with a duty to defend insurance policy with it, that if something were to happen, that they would provide that attorney in order for going through that legal process, which can be very costly and lengthy, and being able to recapture in that scenario and looking at it more in depth, and not leaving those individuals on their own to try and navigate through the situation and fund that navigation at the same time.
So if it does happen and they have the Equity Protect, then you have somebody to walk you through it and to guide you every step. And that way, you're not trying to figure it out, or like you said, the attorney bills alone. So just one more reason to have Equity Protect on top of your title insurance. Okay, so have you seen an increased attempt here just in our local market?
I think absolutely, especially with kind of the different methods that we're seeing. So it used to be you could almost kind of tell. You'd get an email, it would be from a strange account, it would have strange grammar or spelling errors, and they're really changing and growing with the time. So it's not as easy as noticing, a typo or something like that any longer. Like I said, they're intercepting payoffs. They are calling buyers and having them send their wires to different places. They're really getting crafty. A new one we've seen is them, they forge a release and then go and either sell it with no payoff or take an equity line on it. And unfortunately that's something that like real owners are doing. And so it's still fraud. It's not some random person at a computer in a foreign country. It's people who live right here. So absolutely, as they get new ideas, we see more and more.
And I think too, with the length of time of property ownership in East Tennessee and knowing that there may not be eyes paying as close attention to vacant land parcels, for example, that have been owned for decades upon decades, it makes this area that much more vulnerable to those targets.
Yes, I would agree with that for sure. Okay, so how do you see real estate fraud evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
They're 10,000 steps ahead of where we are. So I think there are so many ways in which, like Katie said, technology is a blessing and a curse at the same time. However, with the additional legislative efforts in place and a lot more visibility around these crimes that are taking place, people talking about it more, agents being aware of it more, and creating much more of an enhanced awareness that it allows an opportunity for us to decrease versus continue seeing increasing numbers.
Right.
And I think we're ultimately going to see even more regulation and less options for the parties involved, unfortunately. I think, the days of carefree, come to closing if you can, are kind of over, or will be maybe. You'll have to come, you'll have to provide identification, and I think ultimately, it'll get a little bit more complicated in order to make it safer.
We're seeing so much more with the biometric scanning and having that be incorporated into somewhat of the security measures because of the ability to so easily produce fraudulent identification and so on and so forth. So that technology evolution, and like Katie said, it becoming more restrictive where you just can't pat someone on the back and allow it to just cruise on by.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, honestly, I kind of personally feel like we need some more tighter measures, because I know I've heard a lot of people say this, I don't know why you wouldn't physically go. It's like one of the largest purchases you ever make, but you don't make a little room in your schedule to physically go see the house, go to the closing, so I think a lot of those conversations, I think that is going to change things, because as you said, I think we're going to tend to maybe go back towards the old way of you have to maybe have somebody present, at least one. Yeah, it just helps safeguard it a little bit.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay, so what new technologies or tools are you most excited about to fight this whole fraud issue?
I really love, I assume I'm allowed to say this vendor that we're working with, but we just started working with Close Simple, and
Which, as agents and clients will see, that it's our Foothills hub.
Oh, I'm so sorry, you're right. It's Foothills Hub.
Foothills Hub.
I knew I'd mess that up. But it's awesome for a lot of reasons, but their fraud protection is actually very, very cool. And they come to all of our underwriter seminars and show us different things, but they've got some really neat kind of methods that they use when they're doing like the selfie identification. The client's not aware, but it actually is recording a video for the duration of the selfie taking. So they actually caught someone who was putting the camera in front of like a photo of the real person, but you could hear them talking about it, and the video was able to capture that. So the technology is cool. It's really, really neat. It's scary, but it's really cool to see the new things they're coming out with, and I'm excited to see what comes next, because I'm sure there'll be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be for sure. Okay, so what should the industry be doing right now to stay ahead?
I think for agents to really take a look at this information and really equip your clients in advance with information about why title insurance is important, about what kind of the difference can be related to properties, what other solutions are out there, also taking advantage of other resources to provide that added level of protection and comfort for them, but also vetting the companies that you are working with and ensuring that their methodologies and their tools and these measures are also to the benefit of your client.
Yeah, and I really, when I do classes or even talking with buyers and sellers, and really with our staff, ask the question. If you're not sure or you don't understand or it feels a little bit off, ask the question. Ask as many as you want. Call me 25 times. I want you to feel confident in your purchase and your transaction. I want the agent to feel confident. And like I said, sometimes these questions end up, really proving helpful in some situations. So.
And we're always happy in having conversations with buyers and sellers and being able to ask questions related to these topics, even if they don't have a contract with Foothills Title. We want to be able to equip them with the information and have them feel good about having the knowledge.
Absolutely.
And that's what's important, is having the knowledge. And that's just one of the other reasons why I wanted to do the podcast, because I feel like it's a very, very important topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we just need to work on the awareness. We need to work on the education. So this is just one more venue to hopefully get that out there. So if you're watching it, I hope you got something from it. Share. And like I said earlier, if you have questions that we did not cover today, feel free to reach out to Katie, Raquel, or myself. We will be more than happy to try to get answers for you. And as always, remember, if you or anyone you know is looking to buy or sell, Racel Lawson, Realtor at the House Store, where every move matters.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.